you can revise and have a look at it. But we'll move on. The last week's class we talked about, that was lecture number 3. The focus was on equivalence and equivalent effect. In fact, it was, the title of that last week's was the problem of equivalence in translation at word level and beyond. And we particularly focus upon the contribution of certain important theorists who have contributed, John Dryden and then Etienne Dulett and Tytler, in terms of what was their contribution in the development of the translation theory during the 20th century. Okay, now we move forward and we are going to just focus today on Eugene Nida's theory of translation. As we can see that in this chapter as well, we are basically going to highlight and we are going to discuss how translation theory developed and in the 20th century, and it's nearing to 21st century, and in particular what was happening on both sides, in UK, in United Kingdom, and in Asia and in Europe, and also what was happening especially so in America. So Eugene Nida, when we begin with, is an American and is a very famous American linguist, and we're going to focus upon that what Eugene Nida had to say that. But basically, before I begin, I would just tell you that the question of meaning, equivalence, and translation, which we concluded in last week's class when we talked about the significance of these words, meaning and equivalence, in the works of Dryden and the works of Dulett and the works of Tytler. Today, we see that this theme continued in 1960s as far as translation studies was concerned. But from 1960 onwards, this was tackled especially by American Eugene Nida. Then he took this into more scientific approach. I mean, Eugene Nida moved the translation theory more towards a kind of a scientific approach and focused upon the important features of what the scientific approach according to Eugene Nida was. So he talked about this. That's why we say that Nida and the science of translating. That for Nida it was more like a scientific approach. I mean, anything which is to be taken in a very, very organized manner, we say it's a scientific manner. So his theory of translation, it was based on his practical work from 1940s onwards, when he was actually translating the Holy Bible. So I'm just going to focus a little bit on these, because as you see, the main points are given in the slides, but the actual details are given in the handout, and so I'm going to refer to the handout as well, which you have with you. So Eugene Nida's theory, translation theory, it developed from his own practical work from 1940 onwards, when he was translating and organizing translation of the Bible. And then his theory, as he was, he developed his theory at the same time when he was translating and organizing also. That means himself translating, and whatever work was conducted in terms of translation of the Bible, his particular role in terms of organizing that. And then, in the same time, his own theory took concrete form in two major works. And what were these? The two major works was towards 1960s. He kind of came up with two major works. The first work was published, and it was titled Towards the Science of Translating, and this was published in 1964. And then the second title of the book, which was of more importance, in which he basically co-authored this book, and the title is Theory and Practice of Translation. And Nida co-authored this book with Tabor in 1969. So both of these works, it's too concrete. Whatever theory he had evolved so far, he put it into the two major works, namely Towards the Science of Translating, 1964, and The Theory and Practice of Translation, 1969. So the title of the first is significant, and it's basically, in the first one, he attempts to move translation studies. In this case, he has taken the translation of Bible into a more scientific era. And by this, he meant that he incorporated all the recent works in linguistics so far, which had evolved at this point of middle of 21st century. He kind of incorporated all those recent works in linguistics, in particular in the field of Bible translation. So Nida's work was more systematic approach in terms of borrowing theoretical concepts and terminologies both from semantics and pragmatics, and minded these two disciplines of linguistics, namely semantics and pragmatics, were taking their shape, and also they were evolving in this time. So he borrows the theoretical concepts from them as well, semantics and pragmatics, the terminology, and also from Noam Chomsky's work on syntactic structure, which formed the theory of generators. So he also moved on to from Noam Chomsky's work on syntactic structure, which we must have studied. Maybe you're familiar with in terms of Noam Chomsky's work, which basically published in 1957. So, in a nutshell, what it means is that Nida made the translation study more like a science of translating, with his more practical approach, more scientific approach, even so much so that when he was translating Holy Bible, he incorporated all the latest concepts related to semantics and pragmatics into the field of translation of Bible, and obviously was influenced by all the renowned theoreticians and linguists around him, namely Noam Chomsky. So let's move on and find out how he conducted this. So Nida's work was more systematic approach, borrowing concept and terminology both from semantics and pragmatics, and besides, Noam Chomsky's work on syntactic structure also influenced Nida. Okay. So when we move on and we see that he gives this the whole field, the translation and the nature of meaning advances in semantics and pragmatics. There might be some spelling errors in these slides. Please, sorry, I couldn't have the time to do the correction. These is in the heading. It is advances in semantics and pragmatics. So translation and the nature of meaning advances in whatever advances or whatever research was being conducted, particularly in the field of semantics and pragmatics. It has its clearly application in the works of Nida. So the first thing is that Nida describes various scientific approaches to meaning, because the whole debate was in terms of, remember, equivalence and meaning. So in case of Nida also, that he talked about in terms of describes various approaches to meaning, and he related to that was conducted, as I said earlier, by semantics and pragmatics, and his work in a way also moved away from the previous old idea. Was the previous old idea which was related to that was that as he moves on away from the old idea, that orthographic word has a fixed meaning. Now you must be wondering that what is orthographic word? So orthographic basically means anything related with spellings. Okay, so according or in a way, say you can say orthographic or it means related to the rules of proper spellings in a particular language. So, or it's in a way, it's also science of spellings. So, and actually, when we talk about spelling, then we talk about the different sounds related to how it identifies the different phonemes and how it deals with the pronunciation. So, Nida's work basically moves away from the old idea that he feels that anything, any word which was spelled the way in a certain manner, it always had a fixed meaning. So, as Nida was more scientific in his approach, he felt out that this old approach of just kind of, should I say, relating, fixing the meaning to a proper author, to a word, the way it was spelled, or the way it was spelled, or the spellings. That should not be done. His approach was towards a functional definition of meaning, because he moved on, and his approach was more towards the meanings. And let's see how he devised that. So, and we moved towards a functional definition of meaning. in which a word acquires meaning through its context and can produce varying sentence responses. So when he talks about, a functional definition of meaning, he says instead of a word having a fixed, according to fixed spelling, the way as it is, and then each any word the way it was spelled became a fixed word in itself, a fixed entity, and even the meaning was the same. He says this was not the approach. According to Nida, he says words acquire meaning through its context and can have varying responses according to culture. He feels that words, any words in a language, they can have their meanings can change according to the way it is used, according to the varying culture. That I might tell you that even say in English language, you have certain words which are also used as a noun and which are also used as a verb, and that those particular words again, they also change the meaning according to the context, the way they are put up, they change their meaning, either they're used as a noun or a verb. So the looking or checking word their meaning according to the context became very important with Nida's contribution in terms of translation. And then, apart from the meanings, he also said this, that for him, he says that the context obviously was important, but it also evolved various responses from different cultures. From different cultures would have different implications, different meanings for certain words. So, according to him, word as an entity acquired the status that it could have its meanings. It was not a fixed meaning of any word. It could evolve its meaning according to the context where it was used, and accordingly in a culture as well. Okay, and this was according to the varying responses according to a particular culture. So with this, approach, Nida moved on, and then Nida talked about, according to Nida, meaning was basically broken down into three main, should I say, categories or some, and he broke meanings into three uh, categories or three parts. The first was the linguistic meaning, the second was the referential meaning, and the third was emotive meaning. So he talks about these three types of meanings. Okay, so let's have a look and see that what was Nida's, what he meant actually by having these three types of meanings. These are, when you talk about these three distinct types, what he meant was the first category, linguistic meaning. This he borrowed from the elements of Chomsky's model, and linguistic meaning would be anything related with the way a word would have its meaning in terms of the language. Then the second was the referential meaning, referential, um, related to the reference. Like most of the we explained just now, that words, according to Nida, they tend to acquire meaning according to the reference or according to the context, the way they were used. As I said, that certain words they are used as a noun, and they're also used as a verb, and some are used as a noun and also as adjective. So how do we know that they stand here for what particular is according to the context, the way they are used in sentences? So, according to Nida, words had their first was the linguistic meaning, the meaning as it is in linguistics. Second was the referential meaning, as I said, according to, and referential meaning, in other words, it also means the denotative meaning. So I hope you know these two distinction between these two types of meanings. Referential meaning, the denotative means the word, the way your dictionary denotes meaning of a particular term. If you come across any new word, this is a normal practice that you put in your dictionary, and you see that what does it imply? What is the denotative? Denotative means what does it stand for exactly? That what does this word? इसकी क्या meaning है? ये क्या इसको what you understand by? So the dictionary meaning is the reference, is the referential meaning. Okay. And then he moves on, and Nida says the third type category talks the emotive meaning. The emotive meaning, he also says that this is also the connotative meaning. I'm sure you're familiar with what does the word connotation means or what is the connotative meaning. Actually, connotative meaning is something, it's beyond the literary meaning. When we talk about what is the certain term, what does it denote? Denote means scientifically exactly what does it mean in the dictionary. Connotative is like adding meanings beyond the literary meaning, the way it is given in a dictionary. Let me explain to you this by the help of example. Now, the emotive meaning is that the certain words, they might be having two, three words. If you check in the dictionary, there were two, three words to explain that. For example, these words almost have the same referential meaning, or I say the dictionary meanings like fleshy, obese, fat. They almost mean the same, that fleshy, obese, or fat. But sometimes, if you use another word which is known as portly, P-O-R-T-L, portly, that is basically a word which carries more grace, I should say, and it is a meaning. Obviously, it is this meaning is the same as it what is actually if it was the word fat was. Fat would be the dictionary word. Obese or fat would be equivalent words in a dictionary when if you talk strictly about referential meaning. But emotive meaning would be something beyond that, because if you're using the word portly, that means it at least shows some grace if you're using this word. And it's kind of like a euphemism in which you are the same context, the same word you are explaining, but with a meaning which is beyond the literary meaning. So, as students of literature, maybe you're familiar with the emotive or connotative meaning, that what the writer is trying to say, what is we say is meanings beyond the beyond the lines or between the lines. That this is that there are certain connotations. What the writer is not expressed, given in an expressed in a very clear-cut manner, but what is the underlying message? What does it mean? So, emotive meaning is what I'm implying here. This is what Nida wanted to say, that meanings, when you talk about, if you look at it in a scientific manner, there will be these three main broad categories. The first will be the linguistic meaning as it is. Referential meaning, as I said, is the word as it is in a kind of a dictionary meaning. The denotative meaning, and the emotive meaning would be like the connotative meaning, or the emotive meaning, or meaning beyond the literary meaning as given in a text or according to the context when you're going to read. So, as he says that the meaning comes with these three different categories, and this is how he broke them down to. So that means all the more in the field of translation studies, you have to be more careful as a translator that what type of meanings that actual text is, the source text, and in a way when you are translating it into the target text, your explanation, your choice of word should be equal or clear. Say, if you feel that the particular word in source text has referential meanings, then you choose a word in the target language, in the target text equivalent to that. When in another case of translation, when you are looking at that the writer has used an emotive meaning, it is more like a connotation. So then in that, again, as the role of a translator, your job is very important, that you pick up a word which should have a connotative meaning, and a word which is beyond the literary meaning and to be conveyed in the source language, source text, and all that. Okay. So, as I said, as things moved on in the field of linguistics and pragmatics, semantics, same is the case that the translation theory also evolved, and this is what was the contribution of Eugene Nida. Now, let me just explain you just, the help of these different examples. Now, I'm just wondering that if you look around in your current times, there's so much of translation being conducted around. It's not only, should I say, in a kind of a literary translation or, comparative, remember we talked about how in United States it was comparative analysis and comparative, comparison of different literatures. Here we also have that in the current era, there's so much of translation being conducted, taking place in the field of media as well. You all are aware, you look around for yourself, you see different movies, especially so, this is the trend now to to, especially on media, on television. You see so many plays, especially so translated Turkish plays, which are a great favorite. I see the Pakistani audience. They're all translated from the source language, that is Turkish, into the target language, Urdu, and then and so on and so forth. And so it has become, we can say that in a way it has widened the scope of this field of translation studies. Okay. Yes, yesterday I was watching this movie, and this was basically animated movie or animate cartoon movie, should I say? And it was it was translated into Hindi, and the title of that movie, should I say, or cartoon animated movie was Spirit, the stallion of Comoron. Now, what I saw was that it was a very interesting, full-fledged. The interesting thing about that, the whole animated movie was, well, there was so much effort which was involved in translating that even the songs were translated, and since it was translated by probably in India, so mind you, all the words, like if they wanted to talk about, and it was all the story about different breeds, different types of family of horses. If you have seen the movie Lion King, it was like a version of Lion King converted into, the story was based on a family of horses, and it goes on, and it's based in the south of America, and it talks about the American Indians and how it's basically the Wild West, जिसको हम कहते हैं अमेरिका में, which was based in all those states like Nevada and Texas and all that. That was the background plot in terms of that. And now the vocabulary which was used as was very interesting. That although it had some English subtitles as well, and what was shown on television was with its translation version in Hindi, and I could see the moment Hindi, as you see when you hear it, it sometimes sounds very close to Urdu language, but they have their distinct words. So they use this particular words, mata pita, they kept on using this word mata pita for parents, for this American Indian boy, Joe story ka protagonist tha, mata pita, and for other characters as well, and for the main horse character, jo tha, uske liye bhi words. So I said that even translation as a field, as it's evolving, it's opening up new avenues for people who are in this domain. The translation, itni extensive, and same is the case with Indian movies, which are shown to the most probably in Middle East. I think it's very favorite pastime for people in the Middle East. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you see for yourself, in most of the channels they have these Indian Hindi movies. They're very popular there. उसमें उनकी subtitles ज़ाहिर है Arabic language में होंगी. So this is what happens, is that when they translate, mind it in the field of media or written, they tend to use the vocabulary of their own language. I gave you the equivalent words instead of mother or father. If somebody who would have translated in Urdu language, तो वो उसको माता पिता ना कहते, उसको माँ बाप या वालदैन ये word होती. If somebody, अगर उसकी translation Urdu language में ही होती, but since that movie was translated into Hindi, so उसमें particular words there. The rest of the translation in Hindi we could understand, which was kind of close to Urdu. But this was particulars. There were other examples as well, but I just wanted to tell you that this is very important as a translator's job, to see that when you are translating these different terms and meanings, which you have to keep in mind that which is the most appropriate, which is the most close according to the source text, and then you translate it into the target text. Okay. Now let's move on and see that what different techniques were used to determine referential and emotive meaning. This we are still talking about Nida's work, Eugene Nida, because Eugene Nida, made this translation business something very, very technical, very, very scientific. So Eugene moved on, and then as I make these three categories, I've explained to you what he meant by that. Then he used another series of techniques adapted from work in linguistics, and it's presented as an aid for the translator in determining the meaning of two different linguistic terms. And then he moves on and he says techniques to determine referential and emotive meaning focus on analyzing the structure of words and differentiating similar words in related lexical flow. So it was not that easy for a translator, according to Eugene Nida, when he picked up and he transformed the translation theory into technical terms. He says anybody who was to translate, who was to determine the referential and emotive meaning, had to analyze the structure of the words and had to differentiate even different words in related lexical fields to find out that it most appropriate or not. By lexical fields, I'll explain in further as I come up with these techniques. Let me explain that again. So different techniques and to determine referential and emotive meaning. I'm sorry, this misspelling here. This is hierarchical structuring. There's some misprint here. This is hierarchical structuring. Hierarchical. Hierarchical structuring. The second is compositional analysis, and the third is semantic structure analysis. Let's see that what he implied with these three broad जो उसने techniques use की हैं in order to translate, because he made it like a science, so it has to be, translation had to be done in a scientific manner according to Eugene Nida. So let's have a look at the first category, the hierarchical structuring. Now, maybe those of you who are familiar that this basically, you know that there are different series of words which are kind of related to each other, which are related to, you know, I hope you know what is a hierarchy. Do you know, are you familiar with the word hierarchy? The hierarchy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is hierarchy?
Any
It's a
statistical
category.
One by one, okay. What is hierarchy? Yes. Okay, जी बोलिए. Okay, I can't hear you. What is hierarchy?
It's a category. It can either be in an ascending order, or it can be in descending order.
Okay, very good. This is what, excellent. It's a category when you talk about your things, you classify things and you make it a kind of an order in which you have something on the top. This is actually, if you're familiar with flow charts, जो होते हैं. In certain disciplines, you need a flow chart. There's the main heading, then it divides into two subheadings or three subheading, three, फिर एक next for subheading उसके आगे sub points होते हैं, and this is how this flow chart keeps on moving. And it has to be, normally it moves on that from the top and then it moves in the descending order. आपके top पे idea होता है, word होता है, and then you have all this something coming after that. So the hierarchical structuring, by this he means that when you look at the lexical fields or you want to look at the meanings, you have to see that, for example, if you have the main superordinate category होती है जो सबसे ऊपर होती है, at the top, superordinate. Subordinate तो होता है ना नीचे, जैसे कहते हैं subordinates, offices में you have the HOD and then you have all the subordinates जो उनके साथ नीचे उनके साथ काम करते हैं. But this is, superordinate is at the top. So, for example, if you were to have the structuring of different lexical fields, but lexical fields means different words related to a particular field or structure or profession or something like that. So, if you look at like one example of the word animal, animal as a hierarchical superordinate, कि सबसे ऊपर animal लिखा है. And if you were to make an hierarchical, उसकी आप बनाते हैं tree diagram or something or flow chart बनाते हैं, तो animal के नीचे सब divisions में क्या नाम लिख सकते हैं? Probably what you do is you write animal is a broad category, उसके नीचे आप different animals के नाम लिख सकते हैं with different classifications. तो उनके, for example, उसकी sub branches बना के goat, dog, cow, and so on and so forth. Different animals के अपना horses लिख सकते हैं, camels लिख सकते हैं. And then if somebody is more, कुछ और डिटेल में जाएगा तो डॉग के अंदर आप और स्पीशीज या उनकी ब्रीड्स लिख सकते हैं, जैसे एल्सेशियन लिख सकते हैं, रशियन डॉग ले सकते हैं, पोमेरियन लिख सकते हैं. ऑल दीज डिफरेंट ब्रीड्स ऑफ डॉग्स, उनके फर्दर नेम, क्योंकि सब कर एक लेक्सिकल फील्ड हो जाती है. द होल ऑफ दिस थिंग as a diagram when you talk and the super or ordinate ऊपर वर्ड एनिमल है, उसकी सब क्लासिफिकेशन में अपने डिफरेंट एनिमल्स के नाम शो कर दिए, जैसे गोट है, इट कुड बी डॉग, काउ, कैट्स एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. फिर विद इन दैट जो हेडिंग है नेक्स्ट, उसको आप फिर क्लासिफाई करके डॉग के अंदर डिफरेंट ब्रीड्स ऑफ डॉग. सिमिलरली विद कैट्स यू कैन डिफरेंट different types of cats, you can different types of cats, unki breed hai, and so on and so forth. So this would be one way of doing a kind of hierarchical structuring of words. Okay, that was one category. Then the next category was in terms of componential analysis. But componential analysis, okay, hold on, I'll give one more example as well in hierarchical structure. Let's take the example of the word fruit. Fruit, okay, we all eat fruit. A fruit is at the top, superordinate. अब उसके नीचे आप classify करके क्या लिख सकते हैं? The names of different. What can you write? Fruit के नीचे उसकी क्या categories होंगी? Come on.
Names of different fruits like mango, orange, etc.
Okay, fine. There, yes, that's right. All the different types of fruits, उसकी different categories आप लिख सकते हैं. तो ये सब एक lexical field बन जाती है कि fruit और उसके आगे different. इसी तरह vegetable different fields, furniture different field. तो ये इस तरह आप different fields की वो lexical field लेके उनकी vocabulary बना सकते हैं, सारी related with that. Okay, fine. That's good. You've understood. Now let's move to the componential analysis. This, by this, Nida explained that accordingly to this combination, that means that there are different parts of a word, or you can break up a word into different parts, or maybe you can say that even if you have two parts of the word, but both of them, they are required to make that complete word. दोनों की जरूरत होती है. For example, if you have this word honorable, honorable के लिए आपके दोनों honor and the word able, which is suffix, उन दोनों को मिला कर ये word complete बनेगा, honorable. And similarly, if you want to use the word dishonest, तो ये prefix dis and honest मिला के ये दो separate words के मिला के ये आप ये complete एक word बन. But this, you could break up the words with these categories. You join them together, they make one complete word. And then in the context of one complete word, they have a particular meaning. If you break that word into two parts, then it has a different meaning. Like dishonest को break करोगे तो honest तो बिल्कुल opposite हो जाएगा, and so on. Okay, so that means, in other words, we also say that componential analysis also could stand for that there are different constituents. एक words के साथ आप के different constituents relate होते हैं. For example, if you talking about the concept of a knife, Knife. So with a knife, you always have these words, किसके साथ एक handle होता है, and it has a blade. It has a knife always comprises of these two words. It has to have a blade and it has to have a handle. Okay. So combination analysis means that when you're talking about, like the first example I gave, the example of words like honor, honorable or dishonest and so on. That is, as a linguist or as a translator, you should be aware of what it implies. Okay, that is that you should be aware of the different categories of vocabulary in order to take up this work of translation in a very, very scientific and a precise manner, with a precision in terms of translation. Okay. And then we moved on to the third, okay? And let me read out a little from the text. You just be attentive, and then I'm going to move on to the semantic structure analysis. For all these, what I'm reading now, you can all refer to your handout, which is with you in Google Classroom. So these hierarchical structuring, which differentiates a series of words according to their level. For instance, the superordinate word animal and its words like dog, goat, cow, and then you have the technique of componential analysis, which seeks to identify and discriminate specific features of a range of related words. Then you make on and you move on, plotting the relationship of different words. This is also very common. Relationship between different words, like आप सबसे ऊपर superordinate में grandmother लिखेंगे, then move on to mother, and move on to what parents, and then what uncle and aunts and cousins and all that. So this would vary according to the value of both sex, male and female, generation, one, two, or apart. And it could also move in a lineality, like direct ancestors or descendants and all that. So as a translator, what it implies is that the translator should all be aware of this. This is how vocabulary is used in a particular language. And when that translator is using for translator, that all these different kinship terms as well, which I explained, it's in the previous lectures, that kinship terms should be aware of the kinship terms of the target language, and also obviously of the source language. Okay, when embarking on the profession of translation. Okay, next, now I focus upon the semantic structure analysis, and let's see what is semantic structure analysis. Another technique is semantic structure analysis, which Nida, separates out visually with two, uh, um, with the different meanings, and takes up the word spirit, spirit, spirit. And now this word spirit could have different meanings like demons, angels, gods, ghost, and others. और इसके अलावा इसकी totally different meaning हो सकते हैं. Alcohol, some people use this word alcohol के लिए, the word spirit is used. And then it's just mostly it could be used for these words which I've called out, which I just called loud now, demons and angels and gods and ghosts. So it all depends according to the characteristic, whether human, non-human, good versus bad. Accordingly, the way this word is used, that becomes the job of the translator. Because, as I said, all the word spirit के कितने meaning हो सकते हैं, demons, angels, gods, ghosts, alcohol. According to the characteristics, the way it has been used in the source text, whether it is used as human or for non-human purposes, or for good or bad or anything, it's a central idea is to as a translator who's been getting this training to be a trainee translator, they have to realize the sense of the semantic term, what it implies, the word spirit, and what would it be used. So the way it is used, it should be translated into the source text, okay, the way it has to be done. So then I would love to talk about is that above all, Nida stresses the importance of context for communication when dealing with metaphorical meaning and with complex cultural idioms. For example, where the sentence of the phrase often diverges from the sum of the individual elements. And some he says that when Nida talks about, especially when you're talking in context communication, and when you're taking up the different meanings of particular words, cultural idioms, because when it comes to translations, say translating a literary text, a novel, or a short story, then you come across many cultural idioms which are pertinent to that source text, source language which you're translating. And when you happen, somebody is writing in the target language, then sometimes you need to be very careful in terms of translating the way it as it is with cultural idioms, so that they convey the phrase which should be equivalent in the target language, and which should be clear to the readers of the target language. Okay. Then he gives an example of a Hebrew idiom which was used as idiom as bine chupa, which actually the literary meaning was children of the bride chamber, and how it was used later on with the friends of bridegroom and all that. So in general, all these three techniques, comprehensional analysis as proposed, it was used to use clarify the different ambiguities which did occur, and cultural differences as well. And they also served as a point of comparison between different languages and cultures, the way they had to be explained. Okay. Now, as we move on, the next is the influence of Chomsky. But before that, I move on to influence of Chomsky. I would like you to just to have a look at these two tables, just to see if you could if you could wait for a moment. I would like you to have a look at these two tables to see that and explain them, because these two tables basically pertain to Nida's work. Okay, so I will just show you this one and explain, so that this thing is clear to you regarding what Nida had to say. This table is also there in your notes, which you have with you, but I just wanted to show you today, uh, and I've included in my today's lecture to explain to you that technically what three stages Nida wanted to talk about. So equivalence and equivalent effect, and Nida's three-stage system of translation, and which is again taken from Nida's second book. You know, the second book which was co-authored by, you know, the second book is this is the theory and practice of translation. ये उसमें से ली गई है, in which Nida and Teba, both of them, they are co-authors of this particular book. So Nida's three-stage system of translation can be very clearly observed with the help of this diagram here, and let's analyze it. The first A, that's the source language. Anybody who's translating should have a look at source language, which is point A. Then, as the job of translator begins, would like to analyze and is obviously is going to translate into B, in point B, which happens to be the target language. So would be analyzing, would conduct the analysis that, okay, just read here clearly ये कुछ sentences हैं या paragraph है source language में, that what it's all about. You do not immediately embark upon the process of translating. पहले आप उसको पढ़ के देखते हैं. You read and analyze what it's all about. So this process is analyzing. This arrow moves down, and then these arrows move right, and then you have this word here, transfer. Then, as a translator, your job begins. After you have read, you have analyzed the source language, and then you say that, okay, you have found out, you have understood the source language में क्या था. Then the process of transferring, or the process of transferring from L1 as from source language to target language begins. So as the process begins to transfer, then you reach the point Y, and from Y you move up, and then you are actually now in the process of restructuring, changing, and starting to write in the source language. And then you move on, and you have conducted, your effort has been there in terms of translating. Maybe those were just 10 sentences ही थे या छोटा सा paragraph था. आपने उसको restructure करके, that means उसको दोबारा से उसको बना के, you put it down into the receptor language point B. So just look at these clearly, that it has been done here is that we see here that the events are explained here. They are performed as we are carrying on with the help of verbs, then objects, and then abstract quantities and qualities, and all that they are carried on. Okay. Now I'll move on to another. This is just an example for you, for just introducing to you the different the way translation is conducted. This again is taken from the same आपके lecture number 3 में आपके पास मौजूद है. It's with you. आप Google Classroom में इसको जाके revise देख सकते हैं. But I've just included here in my today's lecture. इसके chapter 3 में से, just to show it to yourself. Say that practically speaking, I told you that I will give this sample in the class so that you're aware that how translation takes place. So let's look at box 3.1. The first word, the sentence to be exact, is in Greek source text. Now, naturally, we do not know Greek language. So you can just see that it is broken down, the first sentence, into different vocabulary. So it comprises of this sentence comprises of 8 words. Eugeneto, anthropos, epistolomenos, parotheo, ono, auto, nuance. So whatever it is, we do not understand what do these 8 words stand for. This was the first stage, that having the source text in front of you, but just breaking up into different units of words. Then we move on to the second stage. This is the literal transfer, stage 1. इसमें ये literal transfer हो रही है from the source text. और कैसे हो रही है? ये उसी sequence में हो रही है. The person who is doing this who has done the literal transfer has done it exactly उसी sequence में. उसको words का sequence भी almost वही है. Let's see तो क्या literal transfer बनती है इसकी. Became, happened, man, sent from God, name to him John. Okay. This is since taken from from Bible. It doesn't we at least understand this is something talking about John, somebody John who was sent from God. But you see the way these words are put up, it doesn't have a proper word order which exists in the English language. But as a result, it's not as you really don't enjoy reading such a translated version. इसमें उन्होंने transfer तो कर दिया message को, but it's not enjoyable reading such a thing. Let's see that what happens in the next stage. So second stage में minimal transfer के साथ how did this version become this second stage? There came was a man sent from God whose name was John. अच्छा, second stage में slightly the meaning became more clear to us, and we could understand at least what was being said. There came was a man sent from God whose name was John. But still, although it's better than the first translation, literal transfer, stage one, but still we see that it was the sequence of the words is something different than we normally have in English language. So we move on to the next, and this is literary transfer stage 3. अब stage 3 पे इसकी literary transfer हुई है, तो let's see. And this is also taken from the American Standard Version of 1901 में इसको कैसे translate किया गया इसको Bible में. So let's see literary transfer में क्या आ गया. There came a man sent from God whose name was John. Okay, so this, as you see, is very close and it makes sense to us and we can clearly understand what he's saying. There came a man sent from God whose name was John. So at least it does has it's now if you look at this literary transfer को 1 मिनट के लिए पहली स्टेज वाले वर्ड जुमले पे जाएं तो आपको लगेगा कि this is far ahead, far improved version, क्योंकि पहली ट्रांसफर स्टेज 1 पे तो थी became happened man sent from God named to him John. It didn't make any any much sense to us, and here it is almost very close literally transfer. Stage number 3 पे there came a man sent from God whose name was John. Or next example taken from New Testament in modern English in 1958 का version है. Let's see that what it stood for. So this was how it looked like. A man named John was sent by the Lord. So you see like this last version taken from Phillips New Testament in modern English, modern contemporary English, जो इसी में 20th century में जो English use होती है. So this is obviously very close to what the type of English we are familiar with. A man named John was sent by God. तो उसी message को कैसे transfer किया गया over the time to different ways of translation, starting from literary transfer stage 1 to 2 to 3, and then moving on even like 1958 वाली भी very close to the stage 3, but stage 4 I should say of the Phillips New Testament it's a modern version, contemporary times mein this is how we use this language. So you note for yourself that adjustments from source text are indicated as follows. Changes in order are indicated by the numeral order, omissions by an asterisk, and structure alteration by small capitals and additions. So this is the way these additions and these changes have been done to the source text in terms of over the years, and with different people coming up with their translation, which has moved on to contemporary times, so that this is how we understand the message as it's given in the Bible. Okay, class. Now this is what I plan to do today. I would focus upon the influence of Chomsky in the next class. Probably that will be on Wednesday. आपकी section A Wednesday को class होगी. उस पे we'll do that. Now it's open to question and answers. Anything which is not clear to you, you can ask me. And move on.
I have a question.
Okay, yes, you can one by one. Now I said you can ask questions by one. Okay.
Ma'am, the first stage that we have discussed that in the first stage we usually in the literal transfer stage we usually split the split the words into different units. Then we just literally उसके meaning change कर लेते हैं. So it is not necessary that the source text could be grammatically correct or not.
It's not for us to have such fast judgment on it. What I'm saying is that like holy books, it is the way it is translated. All these are renowned people who are embarked on this job of translating the Bible. But as the time frame, for me, I think the time frame, the time it was, the era when it was translated had a direct impact upon the way it was conducted. Initially, like आपको पता, first century onwards, on century onward, when translation of Bible was conducted, तो वो इसी sequence में थी. और आप देखें बाइबल के इतने different versions हैं, सेंट मैथ्यूज है, फिर ल्यूक की translation है, इतने versions के साथ it keeps on changing. Then now you have the standard American version and you have the Phillips New Testament. So we are not going to, as it is analyzed, we're just going to see the impact of the era, the way the whatever stage the translation theory was, जैसे evolve हो रही थी, वो सारी चीजें उस पे impact आती हैं आपकी translation की, ठीक है?
So
और
if we are translating in this era, let's suppose from English to Urdu, yeah, or from Urdu to English, so we have to translate it according to we have to translate it grammatically, correct or not?
you have to translate it grammatically, of course, word order भी आपका दुरुस्त होगा. और अगर say you are not translating Bible but you are translating something else, उर्दू टेक्स्ट को इंग्लिश में, तो आप तो वही देखेंगे ना, ग्रामेटिकल स्ट्रक्चर आपका करेक्ट है. अभी जो पहले आपको मीनिंग की डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज बताई थी, that is, we are now moving more closely towards using the as technically the field of semantics has evolved. We are all aware of the categories of words. You do find out the word which is the closest to that meaning. You as students, you're familiar with the thesaurus. A thesaurus is different than a dictionary, you are aware. अब आपने कुछ, let's say you're doing a research or any other project, you normally have a different choice of different words. It is for you to find out and look in the thesaurus that which word really fits in according to your ideas in your mind. वो तो आप अगर एक creative writing में कर रहे हैं. Same is the case with a translation. Then you have to keep in mind that what the source text है, उससे equivalent ये different category of words में, which is the most suitable. Then you try to do that and try to use that. Okay.
Ma'am, one last question.
Okay.
Is there any criteria for selecting a source text? Like we cannot translate anything. So if there is any criteria for translating source text into target text, so please can you give me some example?
I haven't got your question.
Ma'am, is there any criteria for translating source text into target text? Like we cannot translate any kind of text into the target text. So is there any criteria for selecting source text? Like कोई criteria है कि source text कैसा होना चाहिए?
इसका तो कोई criteria नहीं है. ये actually you people are not asked to. Nobody's pushing you to become translators at the moment. You are having just exposed to different theories. The way translation theory is moving ahead with that is naturally, if only somebody who embarks upon the profession of translator, उसके लिए फिर कोई और ट्रेनिंग होगी, ट्रेनी ट्रांसलेटर्स होंगे, वो उसमें आपको you will be made to see that which is most appropriate. Naturally, as a person who's a trainee translator would not embark upon, say, होली कुरान और ऐसे डिफिकल्ट टेक्स्ट या अल्लामा इकबाल की पोएट्री जिसके इतने लेयर्स ऑफ मीनिंग्स हैं, तो आप तो ऐसा डिफिकल्ट टेक्स्ट तो कोई भी सेलेक्ट नहीं करेगा, because nobody would like to pick up. You would pick up something very simple, maybe starting with children's stories or something जिसके इतने ज़्यादा यानी whatever the surface meaning is there, उससे ही आप उसको translate. You don't have to go into the other different emotive meanings or referential meanings or so much. So I always feel starting from the simple things, then you move on to the most difficult. Okay, if out of interest, if anybody wants to translate something, you can do it that way. Okay, right now, anybody else who would like to ask a question?
Ma'am, can you please explain emotive meaning once again?
Okay, emotive meaning was in terms of, remember I said that this is something related to the connotative meaning. You are aware with the denotative and the connotative meaning. Denotative meaning is the dictionary meaning of any particular term. We always tend to look at the dictionary. What does this word mean? क्या उसके meaning होते हैं? That's the dictionary meaning. And your emotive meaning is the connotation. That means we say that as students of literature, you read when different stories, and then you say the writer is trying to say, has used something, but there's something which is not explicitly given, but it's the implied meaning is something else, जिसको आप implied meaning कहते हैं, or meaning beyond the lines or between the lines, or sometimes connotative meaning होती है कि ये whatever surface meaning है उसके से कुछ ज़्यादा कहा जा रहा है. This we talk about something beyond the literary meaning, or the dictionary meaning, or the denotative meaning. That is your emotive meaning. And as the word refers to it, means it shows your emotions, and it is something in addition to the literary meaning. And as I gave the example of कि एक ही word के इतने सारे meanings हो सकते हैं. The word fat, dictionary meaning उसे fleshy भी कहेंगे, obese भी कहेंगे. There might be many, but maybe you find out कि a word which is more graceful, more polite in terms of meaning तो वही है, but उसकी बड़ी politely in a euphemism उसको convey किया जा सकता है. Maybe you can use the word portly, portly, portly. एक emotive meaning हो जाएगा, and then a connotative meaning, though you mean the same thing, but it is done in a very, I should say, in a graceful manner. Okay, right? Okay, now that's all, class. Now I would like to wind up because this is the end, and I would just like to check up certain people who didn't come and join today. Mohammed Zubair was not here. Nantara didn't join today. Then Rida Zainab was not here. And regarding, I think the rest of the class, all of you were here. Okay, class, then inshallah, see you inshallah next one day, same time. Take care and Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz. Okay, thank you so much.
Hafiz, man.